Time News with Celia Hatton.
Good afternoon. Israeli media are reporting that yesterday's attack by Hamas militants has killed more than 500 people. Among them were civilians and a young soldier, Nathaniel Young, who was from Britain and fighting for the Israeli Defense Forces. Hamas has been prescribed as a terrorist group by the UK and a number of other Western governments. In response, Israel has carried out overnight airstrikes on the Gaza Strip, with the Palestinians saying more than 300 people have been killed and over 1,000 wounded. There's concern now for at least 100 Israelis taken hostage and thought to have been taken back inside Gaza. 2 British citizens are so far reported to be missing. Richard Galpin has the latest.
Overnight, the Israeli forces bombarded Gaza. And it has continued this morning. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu making it clear the retaliation for the attack would be massive.
All of the places Hamas is active in this city of evil, all the places Hamas is hiding in, operating from, we'll turn them into ruins. I'm telling the people of Gaza, get out of there now, because we're about to take action everywhere with all our force.
The Israeli military has also carried out artillery strikes in southern Lebanon after mortars were fired from there towards Israeli positions.
This morning, some mortars that were fired from Hezbollah in the north, we responded with artillery fire. And we hope they don't make the mistake of coming into the fight.
Lebanon's militant Hezbollah movement is also claiming it's carried out an attack on Israel, saying it was in solidarity with the Palestinian resistance. It's now been confirmed that a British man serving in the Israeli army, Nathaniel Young, has been killed on the Gaza border. Meanwhile, it's been estimated that more than 100 soldiers and civilians have been taken as hostages by the militants. Some are alive and others are presumed dead. Children, women and the disabled are amongst them. Another British citizen, Jake Marlowe, who was working in security at an outdoor party, has now been confirmed as missing.
Well, let's go to Yolande Nell, who joins us from a hospital in Ashkelon. Yolande, what's happening where you are?
Well, through the morning, shooting has continued in the Israeli villages that are close to the Gaza Strip, not far from us here. And just outside Ashkelon, there was actually a deadly car chase. Palestinian gunmen had stolen an Israeli car and they were chased by Israeli forces. Then there was a shootout on the main road not very far from us. Here at this hospital in Ashkelon, some 400 people have been treated as a result of the unprecedented Hamas surprise attack. They include Israeli soldiers whose bases were overrun. They include partygoers who are at a rave in the fields close to Gaza, and local people whose houses have been hit by rockets. And we have had rocket interceptions continuing through the morning, Israel's Iron Dome interception system in action here.
Yolande, is there more known about the hostages?
I mean, it's interesting because just a short time ago there was an Israeli member of parliament here and a distraught woman came out of the hospital. She was berating him, saying that her son and his girlfriend were missing, and she wanted to know why the government wasn't doing more. It's thought that dozens of Israeli civilians and soldiers have been taken as hostage into the Gaza Strip by Palestinian militants. They include women and children, we understand. And then at the same time, the Israeli military is continuing to pound the Gaza Strip. More than 450 targets hit, it says, in its ongoing operation there.
Yolande, thank you. Yolande Nell reporting from Ashkelon. Well, Sir Keir Starmer says any future Labour government would have the central mission of improving economic growth. As his party began its conference in Liverpool, Sir Keir also outlined plans to pay doctors and nursing staff more overtime, to provide more hospital appointments and to reduce the 7 million people on NHS waiting lists for operations and procedures. From Liverpool, our political correspondent Ian Watson reports.
Has Labour got what it takes to win?
With a general election next year, that's the question that Keir Starmer has to answer. But he has a problem. When posters asked some voters what they thought of him, they weren't sure what he stood for. But he said this week he'll rise to the challenge and provide more clarity.
What we need to do here in Liverpool is bring it together, to weld together, if you like, the reassurance that people need in times like this, with the hope that they want.
And he came armed with some policies. He said he'd pay NHS staff overtime to help cut the waiting lists, paid for by taxing wealthy foreign nationals.
So far as our plan is concerned, it's for 2 million appointments every year, 40,000 a week, to be done out of hours, but paying staff properly to do it.
But would hard-worked and hard-pressed staff really want even longer hours?
They desperately want to bring down this waiting list. That's why we've talked to them. We're not going to impose this. It's a voluntary scheme. They're up for this.
And the Royal College of Nursing said staff were routinely working at weekends already, and the need for extra capacity was urgent. And the biggest health union welcomed it, but only as a short-term measure.
It's not a long-term solution. It's a good way of temporarily improving things when Labour come to government. But what they need to do is encourage those staff who are temporary to go on the books, become permanent employees, and they need a proper recruitment and retention plan for the NHS.
But any substantial increase in funding for public services would depend on increasing economic growth. So realistically, how soon could that happen?
We think that this can happen very quickly. Within months of a Labour government turning in, we can turn this around and get the investment that we need.
Keir Starmer will unveil more policies this week, but these won't be accompanied by commitments to increase public spending. But by the end of his conference, the Labour leader hopes that voters will have a clearer idea of what he would do if he's in government.
Now, Syria, I can tell you a little bit more about those policies and about Keir Starmer's approach. He believes people are currently fed up with the government, but he also knows he needs to provide more clarity about Labour's alternative. So what he's going to be doing this week is revealing Labour's first 5 steps that they would take if they were to form the next government. And we've already heard about one of those steps, because it's that pledge to cut NHS waiting lists in England. A second one has been announced today as well, which is to set up specialist further education colleges to tackle skills shortages. Now, if you're on the edge of your seat waiting for the next 3, I'm afraid you're going to have to wait until Tuesday, when Keir Starmer delivers his conference speech. We'll then get the final 3 of those 5 steps. They're likely to include something on green energy and environment, and indeed on the wider economy. And perhaps older viewers, and I include myself in this, might remember Tony Blair's pledge card ahead of 1997 and the general election then. These 5 steps are going to be the modern day equivalent. They're designed to create big dividing lines with the Conservative government. They're also designed to give people a clearer idea of what Keir Starmer and his party stands for, although some people here say what he really needs is a much bigger, bolder vision going into that next general election.
Ian Watson, thank you. Hundreds of people have been killed in a 6.3 magnitude earthquake in western Afghanistan. Officials in Herat province said several villages had been completely destroyed, leaving residents trapped under the rubble. The Taliban say more than 2,000 people have been killed, though there's no independent confirmation of that figure. The BBC's controversial dramatisation of the life of DJ Jimmy Savile, who was revealed as a serial sex abuser after his death, airs on BBC tomorrow night.
There are rumours that there's another side to you.
What rumours might those be?
The decision to make the drama, called The Reckoning, has been defended by the actor Steve Coogan, who portrays the DJ, and by one of his victims, Sam Brown, who spoke to the Laura Kuenssberg programme and detailed the impact the abuse had on her.
It stopped me. I stopped talking. So I didn't, my communication went. I was in hospital a lot. I felt so unloved. So then when that turned into a teenager, I drank. I used to use glue. It was almost like I wanted to hurt myself for feeling so disgusting. I felt like this was all my fault. I felt...
Sam Brown there, one of Jimmy Savile's many victims. And you can watch the first episode of The Reckoning tomorrow night at 9 o'clock on BBC One. If you've been affected by sexual abuse, there are many organisations that can provide support. You can contact the BBC Action Line at bbc.co.uk/action line. That's it. You can keep up with what's happening in Israel on BBC Online and the BBC News channel. The next news on BBC One is at 10 to 6. Bye-bye for now.
Hello there, good afternoon. We'll take a look at the weather for the week ahead, but first it's been a weekend of contrasts across the UK with plenty of heavy rain for